Breathe, babe, breathe. Slowly, slowly.
The microphone's still on, eh?
Hi. Good evening, everyone. The time has just gone 7:45. A huge welcome to everyone who's watching us this evening. We're going live with an informal chat now, and we'll start the formal presentations or the formal show at 8 o'clock, or in fact, exactly at 8:02. And I see we've been joined by a number of people already. So a big welcome to Jody Seef. Lovely to see you, Jody. Shana tova. Okay, no, so there's a sound issue, Jody, your side, I'm afraid. It's not a mute issue. We just can't hear you. But that's why we have these moments where we test before we go live. So talk to us. Let's see if we can hear you. No, I'm afraid no audio from your side. You may want to try with headphones, or I know you swapped computers. You may want to go back to your old computer and I'll ask you to start your video. But at the present moment, you're not muted, but we just can't hear any audio from you. Okay, I know you're busy saying something to us, but we can't actually hear a word of what it is. So, okay, let's see if your husband can sort things out. But in the interim, Jamie Walpe, nice to see you.
How's it? Nice to see you too.
Where in the world do you join us from?
I'm from my study in Joburg.
Okay, how is the world of studying actuarial science?
It's a bit difficult, just a bit lonely, have to stay home most of the time and work, but it's rewarding and I enjoy it. It's very interesting. You
know, that is the life of an actuary. You have to sit alone and do calculations regardless.
Yeah, it's fine. I don't mind it. I'm used to it.
Cool. Daryl Brown, where in the world are you?
Hi, Howard. I'm in Cape Town, well, Melkbosstrand to be exact, on the West Coast.
So you will notice that those of us in Johannesburg are in t-shirts, which makes me wonder where Bryan Schimmel is, because Bryan, you look like you're in the middle of winter. It's summer in Johannesburg at the moment.
No, it's just a thin hoodie. It's not a thick one. I'm in a tee underneath.
Ah, okay. Much better. I was worried that maybe summer hadn't reached your side of the world yet. Dylan, I see you dressed up for this evening.
How's it, Howard? Yeah, I thought I might as well put on something new with regards to lockdown. You know, you don't ever get dressed up really, so I took the opportunity to dress up. Why not?
So that is actually one of the challenges we have, because we're busy organizing Jewish Achiever Awards this year. And of course, people go shopping and we have a red carpet, and Dina Diamond stands on the red carpet with her microphone and says to everyone, where did you buy that dress? Where did you buy that suit? Bryan, I'm sure she said that to you when you won your Jewish Achiever Award. Where did you buy your tuxedo? Yes. And of course, now that this year we're going to be doing it all digitally, we're worried that people will be in their pajamas in bed. And
well, the usual thing, Howard, the usual thing is that people get dressed up from the waist up, and they're in pajamas and in slippers. Underneath.
So you're saying you don't want to see what's on my feet tonight. Don't worry.
Well, Weil, let's actually ask: Are you wearing pants tonight? Oh,
I'm wearing my sheep on my feet.
Okay, your sheep on your feet. Wonderful. I see Jody has joined us. I'm going to ask Jody to send her a message now that says start video. So Jody, let's see if there we are. We can see you now. Let's talk and see if we can hear your audio. No, still no audio coming out of you. Are you on your computer or your husband's computer? Try your computer number one. Try log in on that one, and I'll ask as soon as I see you to start your video. Danny Kadar, welcome. You're on controls this evening.
I am Howard. And I also wanted to show off to Dory Field's part of the club that I'm definitely part of the bottom half Zoom dress etiquette. So I think we're all in it together. Excuse the pun.
It's so nice that we're all revealing what's below the belt.
Yes, exactly.
So Bryan, what's on your feet?
Do you really want to see?
Yes. Am I the only person here who doesn't own a pair of slippers? And maybe Daryl, that's a little insensitive because you don't have legs. So maybe both of us don't have slippers.
Yeah.
No, I definitely don't have any.
I was given these pink slippers that say superstar by a bunch of kids that I teach at Stageworks. They were clearly trying to say something.
Well, Dory, we were just talking a moment ago of on the red carpet at Jewish Achiever Awards, and we're saying that Dina Diamond always stops everyone and says, "Where did you get that dress? Where did you get that tuxedo? You always look spectacularly beautiful at the Jewish Achiever Awards." But I do want to relate the story. Just by the way, Jody, we did hear you coming off one of the computers. I'm not quite sure which one, but I'm sending you ask to start video on both of them. So whichever you're on, if you can see a button that says start, there we are. Talk to us from there.
Okay, so you know what's happening?
Oh, sorry, I muted you. You're on one. I think you're on audio on one and visual on another. So on the other one, I'm sending you a message that says unmute. Jody, we're watching you on the one, and I think our audio's okay. Talk to us now.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, so we're watching you on the one computer, and we're hearing you off the other computer.
Yes.
The marvels of modern technology.
But now there's a bit of an echo on my side.
So I'm going to mute that one. Talk to us now.
Hello.
Okay, so I've muted your one computer and not the other, but luckily we have a musical director here, so he'll be able to conduct whatever you say off multiple devices.
Okay.
So Dory, I was explaining the story that Dina Diamond stands on the red carpet and says, "Where did you get your ball gown from?" And someone says to me, they're waiting to be interviewed by Dina, "What's she going to ask us?" And I say, "She's going to ask you where you got that dress." And she says, "I got it at the Chinese market." I can't say that on film. So I said, "Well, no one will ever know." And your reply is, "This Versace, I can't even tell you."
Well, Howard, no one carries that off quite as well as you.
Well, as you can see, I'm wearing my Ganesh t-shirt from India because Ganesh is the Hindu god of good luck, and we all need a bit of good luck at the moment.
Certainly do. I love that t-shirt, Howard.
Thank you.
What background have you got tonight?
So we're in my study. For the first about 49 Zooms, I did it all from my TV room, and I thought, well, lockdown isn't going to end after 3 weeks. And we're at that point in time about 5.5 months into it. I better actually move into my study because this seems to be a semi-permanent thing. But I seem to now spend about 8 to 12 hours a day sitting at my desk in front of a Zoom screen, busy talking to people. Bryan, in your world,
yes,
how does this work under lockdown?
How does what specifically work?
Do you sit at home and wait for shows to start? Can you still work? Are you still interacting with people?
Well, the theater industry and the entertainment industry has been dead for the last 6 months. It's been shut down all of the world except for Korea, which is now also closed. It's forced us into having to take our talents and our capabilities into other areas. I've had to do a lot of online classes. I've also been, and one of the best things that actually has come out of lockdown is what I've been doing with Dory. I've turned my interests into producing shows, and we've been doing a virtual show on the Unseen platform, which has been interesting because it's each week, and we chat to people in our industry who are luminaries who've been around for at least 30 to 50 years. But in terms of actual music work, it's all only just beginning to start happening. And the problem has been is that because venues only allow a maximum of 50 people right now, I think that is going to change at the next announcement. I think at the next announcement, it'll be a moving to a 50% capacity of a venue. But you can't run venues at only 50 people. It's just not, it doesn't make any sense financially. So one has been able to do some studio work and some writing and arrangement work. But yeah, I am desperately missing the stage.
Is there a big production that's in the works for when things open up?
There are meetings that have been had, which are happening in the Teatro next year. They have already announced We Will Rock You, which is a brand new production of the Queen show, which I did 14 years ago. I'm not on that one. I've done it once, and but I'm sure that that as things open up, there'll be others. There is a lot of forward planning. There is a lot of forward planning of major productions into the next 3 years already.
If you had a choice of one single show that you'd love to be involved in, that you haven't done yet, what one would it be?
Well, it happens to be a little show.
Ah, okay. The most revolutionary thing that's been on theatre in probably the last 20, 30 years, Hamilton.
You know, at one time in my life, all I wanted to ever do was conduct Les Mis. Then, at one time in my life, all I wanted to ever do was do Wicked. Now, all I want to do is Hamilton.
So, Daryl, I saw you going like this. Have you seen Hamilton on stage?
I saw the film recording that they made earlier this year. Yeah, I loved it. I was in a production of South Pacific here at the Artscape. Yes, thank you. The Artscape last year. So yeah, I'm also in the theatre community, and I love those shows that Bryan was talking about.
Dori, you were in New York quite recently, before lockdown. You did a tour of theatre, did you not?
Absolutely. It was an absolute binge. And when I think of what we were able to see in a short period of time, it was a real indulgent, over-the-top, crazy binge. We saw 13 shows and just, even less days. Some days there were 2 a day. And I thought, is it going to be overload? Will I still savor and appreciate and enjoy each one as much? And we actually did. And, when I think of then, it was only a few months ago, and taking a look at what New York looks like now, we're going to get back. We will get back, but it's a very different world. And I just want to say, Howard, Bryan is very humble about this show called Coffee and Connect, with these names, Janice Honeyman, Richard Loring, Percy Tucker, who was a nominee last year, Hazel Feldman, you name it, who've come onto the show. He makes these show reels, Bryan. Hey, this was a new skill. He put together show reels from material and clips, for the years. Each one's about 3 minutes and 3.5 minutes. And all I can tell you, they haven't seen them yet. And when we flash them on the screen to start each show, they can't even talk. They're in tears. Seeing their lives kind of flash, their careers and their lives flash in front of them in 3.5 minutes. He's done the most superb job with it.
Dori, I can't help thinking that we have to rename your show to I'm Still Alive.
Well, some of those people, there was one who was younger. We're taking a break. We've got a Viva Pelham on Monday. And then we're taking a break for a couple of weeks and watch the space. We're coming back in a different way. But yeah, I don't know. Maybe we can wait for everything just to open up and say alive again, or you're right. And that's what this show tonight is about, really. Coming back.
Still alive and kicking despite everything. Still alive and kicking.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jody, are you a theatre person? Have you ever seen Bryan perform?
I haven't.
No, that's embarrassing. Don't admit that. Lie.
No, I'm so sorry. But you know what? There's always an opportunity. There's always an opportunity. So I look forward to it, Bryan.
I can tell you, the moment a new show is announced, I get a message from my parents and they say, Bryan's in a new show, let's book.
Awesome.
So Jamie, are you cultured?
Not really. I don't have too much time to spend focusing on anything other than work at the moment.
It's only been about 19 years. If you haven't seen a theatre production by now, you should probably just give up, hey?
I'll make a note to make an effort when things go back to normal.
Dylan, is there anything you'd like to confess? I know the time is 8:01 and we're going live in 1 minute. It's a quick confession. Are we going to go watch Bryan in his next production?
For sure. I'm telling you, I'm not like Wolpe. I'm definitely into productions, into orchestras, always been my whole life. Hopefully one day we'll go to Broadway, but so far, you know, I'll keep it up, and hopefully when Bryan performs after lockdown, we can all join him there.
Bryan, the rest of us are willing to pay for our tickets. Please, will you comp Jamie and Jody seats so we can actually teach them some culture?
Sure.
Okay, deal. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time has just gone 8:02, and a huge welcome to everyone. I see we've got about 1,200 people who've already joined us on Zoom, and we expect many more on Zoom. I haven't checked YouTube yet, but I'm sure there are hundreds and hundreds of people watching us on YouTube as well. So a big welcome to all of you. Welcome once again. This is in fact the 54th webinar that we're doing since the start of lockdown. And it seems like a count up, but I don't know what the numbers go to when in fact we get there. As always, we'd love to know where in the world you are, so please let us know in the chat where you are. Bryan, I don't know if you've noticed, but Alan Kaplan's parents have logged in from Toronto. Alan was at school with us. Bryan and I were actually at school together, but amazingly I was a mere child and Bryan, I think, was in his 30s at the time when we were at school. When we're at school together, but so we'd love to actually know where in the world you are. We also very importantly want to tell you that the latest edition of the Jewish Report is out, and this is the Yontif edition. It is 52 pages of absolutely riveting read. So please go to your local Spar, your Pick and Pay, your Nord hypermarket, your exclusive books, your garage shop. Pick up a copy of the latest edition of the South African Jewish Report, and you will not regret it. I absolutely, absolutely guarantee it. And our front page story is this bizarre story of the East London Jewish community fighting with their rabbi who they think has done something a little dodgy. It's a fascinating read. You have to actually go and have a look at the front page edition of the Jewish Report this week. If you can't get hold of a hard copy edition, don't forget we are online on www.sajr.co.za. Please go pick up a copy. This is your Yontif read, 52 pages. It's going to get you through Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, maybe Sukkot, and potentially up to Pesach. It is that much of a great read. You won't regret picking it up. So please go pick up a copy. Danny has always also posted in the chat where you can get an electronic version of it from, and you can download the entire edition on sajr.co.za. Danny Kedar is in fact on controls tonight. If you'll turn on his camera for a minute, we'll wave at him. Hello, Danny.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Nice to be back.
Thank you for everything that you do for us. Really a great privilege to work with you, and we've got an amazing evening planned. So we're going to hear some remarkable stories by remarkable people. but you will notice at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button. If you have any questions for any of our panelists, please feel free to click that Q&A button. Ask them any question you want. They're going to tell us their stories, and towards the end of the evening, we're going to gather and actually discuss some of the really important issues that many of them will be raising with us this evening. If you just want to chat amongst yourself, please feel free. We've created a digital town square, so please feel free to use the chat section if you just want to chat, but any questions, please into the Q&A section. Now, yesterday, South Africa lost one of its great icons, a winner of the Humanitarian Award at the Jewish Achiever Awards, a human rights icon for South Africa, and that was the late George BIZOS. We honored him at the Jewish Achiever Awards because our Humanitarian Award goes to either a Jewish or a non-Jewish person. And we thought that the work that George BIZOS had done entrenching human rights into the South African society was so deserving that we had to, in fact, honor him, and we honored him in 2016. And with that, we'd like to show you a short video of George accepting his award and our tribute that we paid to him. So we dedicate tonight's show in memory of George BIZOS, one of the greatest South Africans who ever lived.
I want to give you the traditional Jewish blessing, which is, as everybody here knows, to 120. May you live to 120, not just for the sake of it, but with the strength and fortitude and in health and ability to continue the outstanding contribution that you have made to South African society.
There comes a time in the life of all people that you either succumb or you fight back. The newspapers were drumming into people's heads that there could be only one sentence, a death sentence. Nelson Mandela was going to be accused number one. I said to him, Nelson, this business that you are prepared to die, you will be accused of challenging the authority. I said, just put the words, if needs be, before the words, I am prepared to die. He said, I'm prepared to settle for that. And they were not sentenced to death.
George rightly is regarded as Mr. Human Rights South Africa. And that's a reputation that he has, not only domestically, but internationally.
George is well known. He's become an icon in South Africa because of his humanitarian work. And this is evidenced by him joining the LRC, the Legal Resources Center, when he retired. And he has always had the man in the street and the ordinary person in mind, in spite of being the person who dealt with cases of very high-profile people.
The Rivonia trial in the 60s was probably the most important because the idea of putting people to death was on the forefront of the prosecution's mind. We managed, due to the behavior of Mr. Mandela, Mr. Sisulu, Mr. Mbeki Senior, and others to avoid the death sentence.
But George didn't only represent them in the legal sense. George looked after the personal affairs. George interacted with the family of the imprisoned accused, including when they were on Robben Island. George looked after them, looked after their affairs. And I can tell you something that really was very meaningful to me was when Mr. Mandela one day described the role of George and Bram Fischer and Arthur Chaskelson. And Mr. Mandela said they weren't only legal counsel, they were friends. That when Mr. Mandela did his will, he appointed George as his executor. And George has been involved now in the winding up of Mr. Mandela's estate.
That I have led a life well lived. I think that such contribution as I may have made to democracy being established in the country is a satisfactory state of affairs. I told you all this because I earned a little Yiddish. Jews, people who have tremendous Rahmanis. I want to thank all of you for giving me this award. I appreciate it very much. And had it not been for Cecilia Feinstein, Frida Greenberg, Arthur Chaskelson, Joel Joffe, and I can give you another dozen names who actually helped me to become what others say about me in praise of my contribution to human rights. Thank you very much for listening to me.
So a remarkable man died age 93 yesterday, and we're so grateful that we're able to award him a Jewish Achiever Award, really, and commemorate so much of the remarkable work that he did for our community and for South Africa. So now, I don't know if our panelists know, we're also running a shofar blowing competition, and we are absolutely determined to find the best shofar blower in South Africa. We are getting probably 5, 6, 7 entries per day. We're trying to get through them all, but we know it's the month of Elul. We know this is the time where we are called to prayer, to awaken. It's Jewish New Year in just over a week's time, Rosh Hashanah, and blowing a ram's horn is integral to the celebration of the Jewish New Year, and an awakening and a calling, a spiritual awakening to all of us. So Danny, let's show us some of the entrants that we received this week.
Force be with you.
It's gonna be legend. Wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant because the second half of that word is.
The second half of that word is freeze. Danny, can we try press play again? Or maybe not. Danny, are you still with us? I think we lost Danny. Okay, let me try share my screen. We've now kicked Danny off and he'll probably join us in due course. But until he does, I see the Jewish report. I see we've lost Danny along the way. He's probably gone into power outages at 17 minutes past 8. So also just a reminder to everyone, and we'll do it a little later on as well. Saturday night, we have a webinar. We are commemorating 9/11. We are talking to people who were in the Twin Towers when the airplanes hit. We're talking to people who were first responders, people who were late for work that day because they had hangovers and never made it into the building and had some of the luckiest escapes of their lives. So Saturday, if you've been unable to actually register yet, we'll put up the details a little later on when Danny joins us again, and we'll show you the trailer. But I want to introduce you to everyone on the panel this evening, and we are joined first of all by Dylan Jacobson. Dylan, you are the one who called me about a month ago and said, let's put together a panel about mental health, about mental resilience, about strength, about overcoming challenges. So a huge thank you to you for helping putting all of this together. And we said, let's do a joint venture between Adams Forum and the South African Jewish Report. And you've brought in Jamie Walpe, who we're going to hear from in a second, who's one of the founding members of Adams Forum. And he'll be talking to us tonight about Adams Forum and what it does. And we are having 3 remarkable panelists tonight: Jody Seef, Bryan Schimmel, and Daryl Brown. And the three of them would take us on a journey and tell us a story about their lives. And I felt completely ill-equipped to do that without really one of my favorite people in the world, and that's Dori Weil. So Dori, thank you so much for joining us, and thank you for helping us all go through this journey this evening. This would be absolutely impossible without you. But before we begin, I see that Danny is in fact back. Danny, are we able to in fact show our trailer for Saturday night for 9/11, and then we'll begin the panel?
We are. Sorry about that, everyone. I will play that right now.
Danny, your sound is, sorry, not connected. Danny, you want to?
Let me say to the families. Let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss. nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores.
So if you would like to join us on Saturday evening and hear some of these riveting stories, Danny is going to post the link right now into the chat. Please feel free. We know that Zoom will be full. We will broadcast as well on YouTube for those people who are unable to get onto Zoom. And if you are watching us on Zoom this evening, and there are many hundreds of people doing that, please press subscribe and like now on the YouTube button. We'd love to get up to 1,000 subscribers because that allows us to do many more interesting things. But Dori, looking at that trailer of 9/11, there are events in our life which we just cannot control. Life throws you a curveball and you just have to deal with it. You have no choice. All of our plans, there's a saying in Yiddish that says, man plans and God laughs. Well, many of us throughout our lives have discovered that God has one hell of a sense of humor and throws us the really unexpected in our everyday lives. How do we deal with that, Dori?
Howard, absolutely. And we often think that we're not going to deal with it. I mean, you know, people sometimes say, why is the symbol for crisis the same as opportunity in Chinese? But really, when you're going through something that is just sudden, when the rug gets pulled out from under your feet, when you know that life happens, as John Lennon said, when you're making other plans, no one ever turns around and says, thank you for this amazing learning opportunity. It's a hell of a journey. And you have to go through it. If you don't own the story, it's very difficult to define the ending. And the whole thing is that as you don't really ever emerge perhaps, but as you get a little bit of perspective and as you get a little bit of distance, the secret is, how do you not let suffering go to waste? If we're going to go through challenges and if we're going to go through crises, are there lessons? And how do you harness those lessons to influence your present and your future? And in this case, other people's present and future too, because you've got three remarkable stories. And you might not have gone through exactly the same events, but you're going to resonate with what some of the insights and the lessons are that people are going to tell you about how do I make it through another day, and then how do I get up in the morning?
So Jamie, you're part and one of the founders of something called Adams Forum. Tell us about your involvement. Tell us how it happened. Tell us your story.
All right. Well, basically what happened was in my first year, during the July holidays of first year university, myself and a couple of my friends, we went on a trip with Awesome Student to Israel. And to cut a long story short, on the third day of our trip, my cousin Adam Seef and obviously one of the integral members of our friend group took his own life. And it was extremely tragic and unexpected. And you know, in all the shock and panic, we didn't really understand what was happening at the time. So we were flown, a few of us were flown back to Joburg just to really grapple with what had happened and to understand, you know, what had happened to our friend. And as you said earlier, we can't really control what happens in life. It made me think about an ancient Stoic quote that says, we cannot control our experiences, only our reactions to them. And so myself, along with a group of friends, decided that the only real way that we could move forward from this tragedy and this pivotal moment in our lives was to channel our emotional pain and to build something that hopefully could even save the life of one person. Because, you know, looking at Ad, he, from the outside, had the most unbelievable life. He was extremely popular. He was very smart. He had everything going for him. And, you know, obviously we can't see behind closed doors. So that was very eye-opening and very scary for me because I grew up with Adam. I basically spent, you know, every moment of my life with him, and to not have recognized that was very scary for me. And so what I learned is that people are very good at hiding. people are very good at being, wearing masks, as the cliche goes. And so what we were thinking is that it may be difficult for some people to reach out for help overtly and to go to a psychologist, and, because that involves face-to-face contact. And some people don't like, some people don't want to maybe share their innermost secrets or their innermost thoughts. And so we thought that a good way to tackle that was to set up Adam's Forum, which is a website. And it's an anonymous tool for allowing people to share their own stories and to be part of a community. Because, obviously most people who feel that they're going through some sort of an emotional trauma or an emotional change feel terribly alone. And what we did was, with the help of a company called Build Your Own Empire, we built a forum which allows people to chat anonymously online and share their stories and to be part of a community, as I said. And I think especially if I think about, the last couple months that we've all faced during this lockdown, it's really given a lot of people time to introspect and to think about themselves in their own lives. And, perhaps people have come into contact with parts of themselves that they hadn't met before. And it's obviously scary to meet a different side of yourself. And I think a problem that a lot of people have growing up in the community is there's some sort of a mold that everyone thinks that they should strive towards to be successful or to be happy. And when people find themselves growing out of that mold, it's very scary. And so we want to make sure that the community rethink that idea, and that it's a fallacy, and that what is perfect and what is successful is just being yourself and embracing your own little your own little pieces of your identity. And so in this website, there's a few features. As I said, there's the Adam's Forum feature, but we also have Adam's Wall. Now, Adam's Wall it's an infinite wall in memory of Adam, which allows people to go on and post messages, thoughts, stories, anything that they would like to say to or about Adam. And it allows, firstly, it pays special tribute to Ad, but it's also very important to show for anyone who feels that they were feeling similarly to how Adam felt, that there are people who love you and who care for you and who think about you, and you are important and you are loved. So the main focus, our main goal, is just to prove to people and to show that we are a community of people that are here and are listening. And it's very important that people don't feel alone and they don't feel scared. We aren't here to seek and assist. We're not professionals, but we're just a beacon of light, for people to just see. Even like we've heard a lot of stories of some people who have gone into the site and read a single post or seen a single picture, and just that act has done something for them. It's changed something within them and given them a little spark of hope and happiness. And for me, that's really unbelievable, because we are, Ad suffered a very, very difficult fate, and his story is so important for people to tell. And so it's our duty to tell that story and to share and to save people through him. And he lives on in our project, and he goes on to save countless lives. And so we can only hope that we do him justice in this project.
So Jamie, in fact, we've posted the details of Adam's Forum in the chat. If anyone wants to take advantage, all you have to do is click on that or save that, or go on to adamsforum.info and use the facilities that are being provided. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Really appreciate it. And thank you for the remarkable work that you're doing.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
So Dori, is it that people who've been through unbelievable trauma often feel the need that they have a lesson to teach the world and that they need to give back?
Howard, it's very interesting that you talking about that, because initially, most people have heard of Elizabeth Kubler-Ross and her 5 stages of grief. And only recently, it was a couple of years ago, one of her colleagues, David Kessler, who actually lost his own son at 21, said that, yes, you can go through denial, you can go through bargaining, you can go through sadness, you can go through anger and acceptance, not necessarily in that order. But he felt that that wasn't enough. We've all experienced some of those feelings now in different ways, when we can go into that later. But your question is about finding meaning. And he added a 6th stage only a couple of years ago that said acceptance isn't enough. What is this about? How do I find meaning in it? And one of the ways that you've heard from Adam's Forum is that they have found meaning in understanding the isolation and loneliness. And I wanted to say when he was talking, don't dismiss that is supportive, that support is healing. It's not about necessarily only talking to a professional or getting that kind of experience and advice. It's about being there. You know, we sometimes say, don't just sit there doing something. But what they are doing is they're saying we don't always have to do something, but just be there. And the healing power of support should never be underestimated. In fact, there are books written about the scientific nature of the healing power of intimacy and the value that has. And we know that that's one of the important things that we're highlighting now with people in lockdown and isolated, to find your tribe, to be listened to with understanding, to listen with understanding instead of response, not always waiting for the next thing that you can say, but really connecting with the emotion of the person and thereby giving them the value and giving them the legitimacy of owning those emotions and saying you're really not alone. And that should never be underestimated. So it's taking a legacy and throwing it forward and recognizing the importance of that for so many other people. It's amazing.
So, Dori, we're going to ask Jody and Bryan to turn off their cameras at the moment, and we're going to talk, first of all, to Daryl Brown. Daryl, you join us from Melkbos in Cape Town. You have an interesting story to tell us. You landed up in the United Kingdom.
Yes, I was living in London, studying there, and after a while, things just got too much for me, and I decided to attempt suicide. I went down to the nearest tube station and I waited for the platform to be empty, and I jumped in front of an underground train. And in the process, I lost both my legs. So I'm a double amputee now, and I use a wheelchair.
So take us through the process, because this wasn't a spontaneous decision. You actually meticulously planned your own suicide.
Yes, I had been struggling with suicide for more than 10 years, and I tried various things, different jobs, different hobbies. I joined a church, I left the church, I came out as gay, and eventually I moved to the UK because I thought that, you know, maybe living in London where I could be myself and fully embrace all the aspects of myself, I would finally feel okay. But I had my first romantic relationship while I was living there, and it ended. I was 25 years old, and I hadn't been doing as well as I'd wanted to be doing in my master's degree. I'd been struggling to get a job in the UK, and my visa was about to run out. So I felt like a failure in every aspect of my life. And I was so tired of this persecuting voice that had been following me for more than 10 years, you know, telling me that I'm not good enough. I just wanted some kind of peace and relief. I wanted to go to sleep and never wake up. And I thought that everyone would be better off without me. You know, I wouldn't be a financial burden on my family. If I came back to Cape Town, I wouldn't be, you know, my friends wouldn't have to deal with me being a constant negative presence. And so I told all my friends in London that I was moving back to Cape Town. I deactivated my Facebook account so that none of them would realize I hadn't come back. And I just figured that all my friends and family here in Cape Town, you know, I'd been gone for about a year already. And I thought, you know, they've had enough time apart from me. They won't even notice that I'm gone. And so I gave my landlord a month's notice, and on the day I was supposed to leave, I packed my suitcase and I went down to the nearest tube station and just waited for the platform to be empty, and then I jumped.
And
you also
Daryl,
left.
oh, sorry, Howard.
Sorry, Dylan, please go ahead.
Daryl, I have a question for you with regards to, you moving to London and you having the struggles that you had in London. I'm not sure if this is a sensitive question for you to ask, for you to answer, but I want to know, do you think that your sexuality throughout this all was a factor in your mental health?
Definitely. I'd been bullied at school for being gay, even though I hadn't come out yet, from the age of 12. And, for many years, I resisted it. I pretended that I wasn't. And then eventually when I accepted that I was gay, for several more years, I, prayed for God to heal me and make me straight and change me. And so for about a decade, I kind of fought against my sexuality. And I'd so internalized the message that being gay was wrong and a sin, that by the time I came out, I still couldn't really accept it or integrate it into myself.
So, Daryl, you sat down and you wrote a suicide note. What happens in your head when you actually do something like that? I wrote an email to my mother and I sent it to her work email address on a Sunday afternoon. So I knew she wouldn't get it until the next morning when it would be too late to do anything about it. And I tried to make it clear in the message, in the email, that it wasn't her fault. It wasn't, no one else was to blame. I tried to explain how much better off everyone would be without me. I apologized for all of the drama that I thought I'd caused. I apologized for the hurt that they might be facing, and I tried to convince her that it was a good thing, me dying, and I tried to tie up all the loose ends so that I didn't have any obligations outstanding. I mean, these actions and the way you describe it sound like the actions of an enormously sane, together individual.
Yeah, I think, by the time I decided to take my own life, at that moment, everything just became crystal clear. It was like this fog had lifted out of my mind, and the only thing that was in my mind was, okay, it's going to be over soon. I just need to get to this point. There's no turning back. I didn't have any second thoughts after, making the plan. It was like this beacon of hope that I was going to finally escape the agony that I was feeling. And so nothing could have, everything just kind of like fell into place because I knew that soon it was going to be over and I just needed to hang in a little bit longer.
Had you gone for professional help at all at that point in time?
No, I'd never spoken to my friends, my family, or a therapist or anything. I didn't think that, I didn't really respect or understand the mental health profession. I thought no one's going to be able to say something that is going to suddenly make everything okay. I thought everyone else is dealing with their own issues as well. Why can't I deal with mine? I just need to be a man and suck it up and push through it and kind of deal with it on my own. And the fact that I felt that it was overwhelming me when everyone else was seemingly coping fine with their issues just made me feel like even more of a failure.
And then Daryl, And then Daryl, with regards to, with the London Underground, and you jumped in front and everything after that, which you haven't really touched on yet, what made you want to live after that experience? What changed in you?
So immediately afterwards, I was very disappointed that it hadn't worked, and I was very angry with myself as well. I felt.
Well, can you actually expand on that? When did you realize you hadn't died?
Okay, this might be, I'm not going to go into too much detail because it might be a bit triggering for some people, but I woke up when I was underneath the train, and my first thoughts were like, are you effing kidding me? It didn't work. What am I going to do now? And I just kind of closed my eyes and lay there and hoped that, you know, I can still lose consciousness and this could still work. It could still all be over. And I was just hoping for it to work. And then afterwards, when I was in the hospital recovering, you know, I was so angry with myself. I thought, you know, I'm such a failure. I couldn't even get this right. But I started, when I was in hospital, I started seeing psychiatrists and a therapist. And the first time I spoke to a therapist, I thought, you know, I spoke to her the same way I'd always spoken to everyone, just kind of wearing a mask of, you know, everything's fine, there's nothing to see here. But she saw right through me within 15 minutes. And it was weird. I would be telling her these stories about things that had happened to me in the past. And it was as if she'd been in those situations with me and could see inside my mind. She knew exactly what people had said to me, exactly how I'd felt. And, you know, that was a big turning point for me, because I thought, okay, you know what, I'm not crazy. I'm not the only person who's ever felt this way. There really is someone who understands and who can guide me through this. And then when I came back to Cape Town, obviously with my new disability and everything, I couldn't hide what had happened to me. So everyone found out. And my friends and my family were so supportive. You know, before I'd always felt kind of like a spare wheel in my friendship group. I thought that I was just someone that people tolerated. I didn't realize how much people actually loved me and valued me until all of this happened. But also so many people, so many of my friends opened up to me and said, you know, they'd been struggling with their own issues of depression, and they'd been seeing therapists for years. And I realized so many of us had been going through exactly the same kind of thing, but we'd been ashamed of the stigma, or we'd been scared to open up. And that was when I really realized, okay, you know what, this isn't going to get better until we're not going to overcome the stigma unless people who are going through it or who have been through an experience like mine can start talking about it and showing that, you know, you can have depression, you can be on medication, but still have great relationships. You can still engage in life. You can still contribute to society, and really kind of dissolve that stigma. And that was when I decided to start talking about my story. And like Dorianne was saying earlier, that was really how I decided to make meaning of what had happened to me. And, you know, I thought, okay, you know, what use is my life? What purpose does my life have? And I realized that the only confirmation that I might get of whether I was making any difference is at the end of my life, in 50 years' time, if I look back, you know, I have to be able to look back and think, did my life have meaning to me? Did I do something that I felt was valuable? And this was kind of, that was when I decided to do something that I thought would be meaningful to me.
So Dori, can I bring you in at this point in time? Because the key thing is that so many people who clearly need someone to talk to, someone to bounce these things off to, are not going ahead and going to see a therapist or a psychiatrist at the right time, at the appropriate time where it could really make a difference to their lives. What is it that stops people going to see professionals like yourself?
Howard, you know, I think that you made a comment earlier of it seems like you acted in such a rational way. Now, the thing is, it's an irrational way based on just enormous pain and loneliness and isolation. When you're going through that and you don't see any way out, is it not rational to say, I will make a way out? So the real sad part is that you have to show vulnerability instead of share vulnerability. Can you imagine having to show it, even in Daryl's case, so graphically, to give yourself permission to say, you know, I perceive that I'm not going to be accepted. I perceive that that no one else is like me. There is such shame. He spoke about the inner voices in his mind that always say, I'm not something enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not clever enough. My sexuality is not what it should be. And when Daryl was talking about having to leave his country, and maybe a lot even who cared about him, to try and escape what he perceived all the judgments were on the outside, and even trying to escape the voices the messages he was giving himself in the inside. I just wanted to say maybe he could also say something about what really prevented him, because it really is perception. I think that there is still some judgment. I don't want to say that there is no judgment and there's no good or bad or right or wrong or should or shouldn't be. My mother says I have to, my religion says I've got to, men are, women are, and we have these messages that we introject, that we inhale, that become woven into the fabric of our being, and then they govern us. But the thing is, a lot, when you check them out, when you question them, the response that you get is hardly ever what you perceive. You know, Daryl is saying that the love, the support, the understanding, the compassion, the acceptance, the connection that he felt from his friend group was just, first of all, very surprising to him, although he'd experienced some of it from his therapist. But it was like, how can they accept this kind of terrible person that I am because I don't conform? So I think that it's our perceived judgments that we often don't have the courage to check out, even by one person in a confidential, professional setting, who would really quite quickly understand, because they know that this is what governs so many of us when we don't feel enough. And just through that understanding, empathy and shame cannot live together. Empathy is like kryptonite to shame. So the minute you understand and you express the understanding, you're also validating the existence and the feelings of that person. And that's the beginning of the therapeutic part. So, you know, I think that Daryl is saying, and in Adam's forum is saying, for goodness sake, let us have the courage to be on the outside what we feel in the inside. Let's diminish the gap between how we feel and how we believe we have to be.
So, Daryl, you said something very interesting, to me, at least as a layperson. You said, when I look back at this in 50 years' time, and to me, that means you've actually made a decision. You've made a decision to live. Was there a moment, an epiphany, where you suddenly realized, okay, it's all okay. I want to live. That this decade and a half of thoughts of suicide are actually over. I'm ready to get on with my life now.
But I still go through ups and downs. I'm still on medication. I still go to therapy. And I have felt suicidal once or twice since 2013, when all of this happened. But, you know, when I kind of made that decision and thought about me 50 years from now, I'd say that was about 1 or 2 years after my suicide attempt. And at that point, you know, I'd witnessed all of the pain that my attempt had caused my friends and my family. And I had gotten help that I'd never gotten before, professional help and support from my friends that I was finally listening to, that suicide just didn't seem like an option anymore. And, you know, I started studying psychology as well. I decided to make a complete career change. And so I've been learning, and I started, I don't know, just kind of inhaling almost all of these readings that I'd done on mindfulness and meditation, anything I could get my hands on, to give myself tools to kind of cope with this, you know, the downs. that I feel when they do come along. And I feel much stronger. I feel like I have more tools to more support to cope with the I don't know, the depressions that I get sometimes. And
so Daryl, you do realize that you're not unique there. And I want Dori to comment on this, but, you know, particularly during the period of Corona, I mean, we've been cooped up in our homes for nearly 6 months now. Our normal lives have suddenly disappeared. All the things that connect us to the world have changed. Dori, is it okay to wake up in the morning and not feel great or not feel like wanting to get out of the bed? It seems like these are the most abnormal times and we shouldn't be feeling normal.
Well, Howard, I think that if you don't have those kind of times, you either kind of very cut off from what's going on around you. I mean, I would really worry about that. Or, you know, they are normal reactions to a very traumatic situation. We are going through a hugely uncertain situation. And in fact, I know that we are doing a whole webinar on 9/11. When I talk about this uncertainty, I'm thinking of a doctor who was at 9/11, you know, really working there. And he said to me, you know what's different this time? It's an absolute huge uncertainty that is a springboard for all these emotions. After a while, as traumatic as it was there, we knew what we were dealing with. We couldn't get sick. We knew that it would be over. You know, we didn't have to be isolated from our friends and family. We knew what we were dealing with. So all of these aspects of uncertainty, plus all of the aspects of loss of routine, loss of jobs, loss of money, loss of sitting with your family around a table that we used to just take for granted, loss of physical contact, you know, together with the isolation is going to generate a huge amount of stress, sadness, fear, all of that. And so perhaps one of the good things, in a sense, is that the whole issue of mental health has become destigmatized because everybody's going through it. People will talk about it. People are having what we call these COVID conversations, which are more, as my kids always say, D&M, more deep and meaningful, more self-disclosing and more vulnerable. But that isn't enough. Having said that they're normal feelings, does that mean that we don't have to learn how to deal with them? Not at all. We still have to learn how to deal with them. We've spoken a bit about support, and now Daryl is bringing something else into it. He's talking about mindfulness and he's talking about meditation. And that to me falls under the umbrella of taking care of yourself. So what we want is some of kindness management before it gets to crisis management. We have to lean into the feelings that we've got, which is counterintuitive because usually what you say is, oh, for goodness sake, it's just a bad day. I'll shove it under the carpet. So our emotional carpets start looking like the Alps after a while. If you have to start recognizing the feelings in order to deal with them, and there's a whole way of being able to do that. So I'm pleased that Daryl is saying I'm finding tools. Daryl, I'm also recognizing the honesty of the journey to say, look, it's not just I kind of decided I'm going to choose life and then from then on, I was fine. Not at all. You're recognizing that there's still challenges, that there's still bad days. You're developing ways of coping with them within yourself. You're reaching out for the support that you can get. You are doing something like this, you know, which is saying, for goodness sake, give yourself permission, you know, to have these kind of feelings, and you'll see that you're also giving other people permission to share them with you, and you connect better like this. So there are lots of lessons in what you're saying, Daryl.
So Daryl, I don't know if you've looked at the chat at all, and probably not because we've been in conversation, but there's just a deluge of people saying, thank you for your honesty. Thank you for your frankness. You're so brave. Does it feel like you're brave telling your story, or has this become part of your life? I want to ask you that question. And when you've answered it, I want to ask Dylan a question, because I can't help thinking those deluge of messages that we see are coming in primarily from women and not men. So I want to ask Dylan, is there something that allows women to show empathy and not men themselves. So Daryl, do you think you're brave?
I don't feel that way. I just feel like I'm doing what I need to do. And I don't know, maybe I was made for something like this, or I don't know, maybe this was given to me because I could respond in a certain way. I don't know. I just feel like I'm doing what I feel needs to be done. But it's still scary. I was having butterflies before this webinar. So
well, there are only about 2,500 people busy watching you at the moment. But I think your message really has just such a remarkable lesson for everyone, and just the ability to reach out without shame, to speak to people. Dylan, you knew Adam. I imagine you just wish he had actually sat you down and spoken to you.
Yeah, completely, Howard. So firstly, going on to your first question about, women and empathy and sympathy, and how, men must be strong, and, women must cry and men mustn't cry, and, men must lift weights and they must go to the gym and they must be strong and they must be physically strong, and so must they be mentally strong. And, we have this, the stigma about when you have trouble, you must go to your father, or you have trouble, you must go to your mother. And I think that that's a huge part of Adam's Forum at this moment. It's to end the stigma that who says if you're a man, you must be strong? Who says that if you're a man, you mustn't cry? You mustn't show your feelings. You mustn't look for help. You mustn't go to therapy. And so many difficult situations that so many people in our community face is because of the stigma that people have put out there that, men mustn't, show their emotions, and they must, take a deep breath, and they must toughen up and, put a smile on your face and don't show your emotions because you're a man. But for us as Adam's Forum, that's a huge thing that we're trying to break up. And the stigma about how men can feel pain, men can feel physical pain, and so can they feel mentally pain. They can't just feel pain in the gym. And going on to that, I've got one more question for Daryl, and that is a little bit off topic to this, but my question to you, Daryl, is, you mentioned Christian and at the beginning, and, you coming out as gay and you being in the religious circle, do you believe that religion as itself makes it harder for gay people or bisexual people in today's times, harder to come out? And does that put a burden on you as a person?
I think many organized religions do make it harder for gay people because they're not, they haven't adapted with the message of society. And I think a lot of organized religion places too much importance on a certain rhetoric or traditional kind of mindsets. But I do believe that you can be gay and still have a rich spiritual life. You can still believe in God or follow whatever kind of religion you want to. You just need to, to realize that I don't think any being that created you would reject you for being who you are.
A God of love, indeed. Daryl, thank you so much. That story is just deeply moving, unbelievably emotional, but so honest and so raw. We thank you so much for sharing. We're going to come back to you a little later and to answer. I see there are lots of questions in the Q&A section. You may want to have a look at that yourself. But please, as you do that, also go through the chats and just understand the way people have reacted and how your message has resonated with so many people. So I'm going to ask you to turn off your camera and we'll get back to you just a little later on in this broadcast.
Thanks.
May I just say, just before we move on, that something about men which I don't want to do. First of all, everybody, just take a look at Howard. He's become such a familiar face here. Howard, I need to ask you, when you're having a down day, do you do you say, I'm having a bad hair day, come over for a chat to your friends? Do you call your friends like women do and saying, whatever it is. Men don't. And I just want to make the point that men connect more through doing very often. This is such a generalization because we hear exploding the myth. But, you know, my friends are my doing friends, a man would say. These are my squash friends. These are my golf friends. These are my whatever, chess playing friends. These are my work friends or whatever. We connect either through sport or we connect through an activity. And that's how we connect. We don't just easily phone up and say, you know, I'm feeling low today. Can we talk? It's a very new thing. And the frustration that's been arising, huge frustration in men, but and in women, but because of lockdown, they either acted out, you know, aggressive or sometimes acted in depression. And we have this huge increase in gender-based violence. Not to say that there's ever any excuse for it, but the suicide rate amongst men is exponentially higher, but really exponentially higher than it is amongst women. So the message from Dylan and from Daryl is, you know, it doesn't matter what your gender is. You are a member of the race. You need to own and be able to reach out and talk about in some way all of your feelings, and you'll probably find that the judgment isn't as extreme as you thought it was.
Thanks, Dori.
I'd just like to add something to this discussion on mental health in men. I think part of one reason why men feel like they can't see a therapist or open up about their feelings is that they don't want to burden their family or their loved ones who they should be protecting and should be providing for with, you know, their inner issues. Whenever I'm kind of asked that question, I just think, you know, as a man, if you want to protect or provide for your loved ones, making sure that you're healthy is important. You need to look after yourself in order to be able to look after the people around you. So yeah, I think that's really important.
So Dori, I want to say that the corporate world has recognized it and disguised it in a different form. And the corporate world, through organizations that I know you're involved with in YPO or the Entrepreneurs Organization, or life coaches that you find in the corporate world, is really a thinly disguised way of getting people to talk.
You know, I think that you're absolutely right. It's much more acceptable to say that I'm under such huge stress or things aren't going well, often starts with business, and go to talk to a life coach and have these kind of platforms, than to say, you know, I'm really not coping personally and I need to talk to a therapist. So it doesn't matter to me if there's a door and an entry that makes you feel a little bit better and okay, and you take a step through it like that. And as I say, that we can connect through authentic vulnerability. I think that it's still positive.
No, it's enormously positive. We just disguise it in other words to allow men to be able to talk to other people.
Absolutely.
But with that, Jody Seef, you have experienced any parent's greatest nightmare. You have paid the ultimate price. You have lost a child to suicide. That is every parent's worst nightmare. The fact that you get up in the morning must seem like a miracle to everyone watching.
Howard, and I'm going to apologize in advance for getting a little bit emotional. An absolute nightmare. It's been an absolute nightmare, and I'll never ever forget that day. I was driving to work, got myself a. Can you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, okay. And I was driving to work, and I went to get myself my Seattle cafe latte, which I do every morning. I was on my way to Potchefstroom. I was facilitating a talk to various healthcare professionals. When my husband phoned me at 7:15 in the morning, he said to me, "Jody, something's happened to Adam. You better come home now." You know, driving home, I was in an absolute fog, and I arrived home, and there was just a sea of Hatsola. And they whisked me upstairs, and they sat me down, and I'll never ever forget this. It was myself, my mother-in-law, my daughter, and Justin. And I was in absolute shock. And, you know, it's one thing to hear that I had lost my child. I then had to find out how he died. And then I had to hear the note. And, you know, I just want to say, Daryl, I just want to say thank you so much for sharing what you shared. And while I was listening to you speak, I said, if only my son Adam could have heard your story, because there were so many parallels and so many similarities. And you know, what goes through my mind now is, if only he knew how much he was so loved, the community. And that's, you know, that's what I took out of what you spoke about, Daryl, when you spoke about you couldn't believe how much support and love you had from all your friends and all your family. You know, I think when you're in that state, when you're suicidal, you don't think rationally. And that's where Adam was at. You know, he thought, you know, you get this paranoia, and his friendships were so deep and so beautiful, but in his own mind, it just wasn't. Everything was very, very different for Adam. So Howard, yeah, I never ever expected this. Adam, you know, if I look back in retrospect, there were some subtle signs, but there was no way that I thought that my son would go on a trip to Israel after working so hard, after looking so forward to this trip, going with his best mates to Israel, partying in Eilat. I spoke to him that day. He phoned me from Israel, telling me he's having the best time. He'd been on the water all day, having a great time. And then I found out the next day that he took his own life.
And Jody, just describe Adam. Adam was a genius. How did he do in matric? He had a friendship group. He had circles of friends around him. He had a loving family around him. Like, you would think that someone like this would have not a care in the world, that he had the most remarkable future ahead of him.
You know what, Howard? I think that was the biggest tragedy. I think, and that's why it rocked this community. I mean, Adam had it all. He was an absolute genius. You know, his achievements were off the charts. And I'll share with you some of his achievements, just to give this broad audience a bit of insight into what this boy achieved. And even with these achievements, it was never enough for him. He was always trying to reach for enough, but for him it was never enough. He got a full house of distinctions. He got a 93% average in matric. He just wanted his honors blazer. He got his honors blazer. He was recognized at WITS as one of the top 100 applicants to apply at WITS. He got accepted into every single medical school that he applied for. You know, he never survived to see his results at first year university. He was so worried about his results because he never did biology and matric. He got first for everything. You know, Howard, I think he was too clever. He was so clever, but, you know, he had such a low self-esteem that it was never, ever enough. You're right, he had the most amazing friends, boyfriends, girlfriends, the most special boy. And I think this is why it came as such a shock, because you would look at this person who came across as so kind and so sensitive and had the ability to make people laugh. He was so sensitive, and he was so inclusive, you know, when he was together with people, that people were in awe of Adam, and people respected Adam and wanted to be like Adam. And yet no one had any idea the demons that he was grappling with. And that's why it came as such a shock, you know. And I've had a little bit of insight into this, and Daryl mentioned it, and I've got so many insights to Daryl's talk, and I just want to thank Daryl, you know, once again, is that I don't think he was trying to take his own life. He was trying to get away from that pain. It's that pain that is so suffocating and so unbearable. And I tried to get him help. I really, really did. He resisted though, and he wouldn't talk to anybody about his demons. And he had so many opportunities. With myself, I mean, I'm very much in psychiatry. My twin sister's in psychiatry. He had so many mentors. He was very much involved with B'nai Kiva, his first cousin Jamie, his best friends, his boyfriends, his girlfriends. He had so many opportunities to share, and he didn't. And the first time that I heard some of the demons that he was grappling with was in that letter that he left us.
So, Dori, can I ask you, what is it that makes people believe that what they are is not enough?
Jody, first of all, my heart goes out to you. People say I can imagine. It's actually very, very difficult to imagine. I mean, I have twins, 23. I just absolutely cannot imagine the pain, which of course is exacerbated by this, shocking way that he died. And your feeling of, gee, if only he saw himself in just a little way like we saw him. If only he could see some of that. And I think, Howard, your question, really is I think that you just hear that Adam was defining himself too much about, my worth is too much related to achieve, to what I do. And then, in order to feel worthy, you saying, Jody, that it was never enough, never enough, never enough. And there was a whole gap of feeling unworthy, which he didn't recognize. And it's interesting because of the way that we traditionally define success. And I think that you're teaching us about something of really look at it much more broadly. What is success really? And we define it often by power or by money or by status. And we think that to achieve those kind of things, you really have to do very well. There's an emphasis on doing more than being. But it's really interesting that, IQ only predicts 6% of job success. If all of us who are on this web now, think of the people who got the 7, 8, 9 distinctions these days in matric, where are they now? But it often isn't really that kind of predictor, even in terms of job success. But we talk that and we chase after it all the time. And I've always appreciated, although I think that we need to focus on it much more, that the mission or the first line of the mission of what am I talking about? Jewish education. You see it everywhere on their mission statement is we nurture mention. And there is so much emphasis on results. And we are so great because we got all of the results. I bumped into someone recently who was telling me that they have 3 sons. One's a doctor, one's a dentist, and one's a lawyer. And I said, oh, are they happy people? Because we just almost expect it to be like that. So Howard, your question is that what makes us think that? I think we've got to broaden our attitude. I think that we have to focus much more on emotional rather than intellectual intelligence. And much more, really, really much more on the things that are the defining factor for a sense of fulfillment in your life. Your ability to make long-term relationships, flexibility and adaptability, resilience, those are the kind of factors that we should be focusing on just as much, if not more, than an emphasis on results, because you can start thinking of I am my results. And because I don't feel good enough, my results aren't good enough. And therefore, that's where I'll put my energy. So I think, Jody, through your unbelievably devastating experience, you're highlighting so much to us about the importance of breadth of thinking and the importance of what really is important. And people can't hear what you don't say sometimes. So you saying, well, maybe in retrospect, and I'm sure you can comment on this, that you went through times of your own self-recrimination. Why didn't I see this? What about that little sign? Was I in denial? Did I mess that up? And I don't know where you are in that kind of process with yourself. But I'd love to ask you about being able to only emerge when you say to yourself, I loved my son. I did the very, very best that I can do at the time for what I knew. And to be able to not layer the devastation with thoughts about yourself or maybe your husband or other people.
So you know, if I can respond to that, Dorian, you know, thank you for those insights. I do agree with you about the EQ, but what I do want to say is that Adam put that pressure on himself. He knew that that was one thing that he was good at, was his academic self. So he strived to be the absolute best because he wasn't into sports. So he pushed himself. Myself and Justin, as parents, we didn't push our children at all. But I'm so with you, you know, in terms of the EQ, far more important than IQ. And I know that Adam needed to work on his EQ. You speak about that guilt, and I've had to work through a lot of emotions. As a parent, you look back, what could have, would have, should have. You know, I've worked through a lot. In my whole family, we're in therapy. I go once a week. I work with the most amazing psychologist who's worked. She's just absolutely phenomenal. That she's really got me to really share my feelings and to feel my emotions, to really help me be resilient, to almost build a cocoon around me where I feel safe to show my vulnerabilities and share my emotion. I do feel that I was a good parent to Adam. Obviously, one can always do better, but you know, Adam was complicated. He really, really was. And I think it's really hard for a parent where you try and you just get pushed away, you get pushed away, you get pushed away. You know, he was so disciplined, Adam. And if he wasn't going to share, there was no way that he was going to share. So I had an idea of some of the challenges that he was experiencing, but I had no idea the depth. So there was definitely breadth, but I had no idea on the depth because he hit it so well. He was an absolute master. But, you know, I want to just share, you know, a little bit of how I do it and how I get up every morning. Because believing me, there are days where I just want to put the duvet over my head and not face the world. And I do it because that's what Adam would want me to do. The one thing with Adam, he was always proud of me. He was proud of me that I went to university and I got a degree. He was proud that I was a working mom. And I want to continue making him proud. I get up for my rock of a husband, Justin, who is my everything. I get up because I have the most magnificent 17-year-old daughter who I absolutely love and adore and have absolute respect. I get up for my sisters who are my life. And I just want to make mention, I get up because I want to support my one sister, Bev, who at the moment is in the battle of her life with her cancer. And that is why I get up in the morning, because I need to be strong. And there are 3 things that I do every day that helps me stay connected with my boy, with Adam. And with this broader audience, I wanted to share some of these 3 things that I do. You know, for those that don't know me, I have an identical twin, Tracy, and we exercise virtually every single day. And exercise really, really, really helps me. And every time we exercise, we find a dandelion. And why a dandelion is so special to me is that if you go onto Adam's forum, the first picture that you'll see is Adam blowing a dandelion. So every time I go for a walk and I see a dandelion, Trace and I will smile, we'll feel connected to Adam. We blow the dandelion. And it's so amazing because I actually went and I looked up what is the meaning of a dandelion. I just actually want to find out, I just want to find where I wrote this down. And it's quite amazing that a dandelion stands for emotional healing. And I had no idea. But every time I go for my walk and I see a dandelion, I smile. I have a memory of Adam and it just makes me feel connected to Adam. The second thing is that ever since Adam died, I have a continual candle that is lit. This candle has never ever gone out. They're 7-day candles and I keep on buying candles and it's next to the most magnificent picture and it's on a tray that a very, very special friend of mine made for me, for Adam. Because Adam's light will never ever go out in my heart. So that candle is forever. And the third thing is that I leave my bathroom light on every single night. because Adam would always go out and he would be joining with his friends and he would be the last one to go to bed. And before he'd go to bed, he'd always brush his teeth in my bathroom. So he would be the last person to switch off that light. So I'm still waiting for my boy to come home to switch off that light. So the light's not going out. So these are the things that I do to connect with Adam, to have his memory with me. You know, when I go to sleep at night, it's my best time because that's when I have these vivid memories of Adam. I wear his pajamas every night so that I have his memories and that his memories are front and center. And that is how I get up every day. And that is how I face the world. There are these little things that I do. And it's these initiatives that Adam's friends, Jamie and Dylan, and his boyfriends and girlfriends have done, the likes of Adam's Forum, that are just phenomenal, because I know that Adam is the poster child. But if this type of forum can save the life of one person, then my boy didn't die in vain.
Jode, are there mornings that in fact you feel it's actually just okay to not get up?
So, you know, I have my days. I do have my days. So there are some days where I don't get up. Okay, I'll never miss work because I'm one of those A-type of personalities and I'm a bit of a workaholic. But there'll be days on the weekend where I don't get out of bed. I stay in bed, I cry, I have my whole nut chocolate, my plain Lay's chips and Netflix, and I stay in bed the whole day. And, you know, and I speak to my psychologist about this. And she said to me, Jody, it's absolutely fine, you know, as long as it's not every single day. And I do allow myself that. You know, I allow myself to cry and to be emotional and to be immobile, because a tragedy like this immobilizes you completely. And, but what I do want to say, Howard, is that for some reason I have the ability to bounce back. I have amazing friends and family, and I speak to them and they hold me very, very close. And I'll cry, but then I bounce back. So I have that, I think it's an inherent resilience, perhaps a genetic predisposition. I've been exposed to a lot of hardships. I lost my mom when I was very, very young. I've just been exposed to a lot, which was perhaps preparing me for something like this. But I do have those days. I absolutely have those days.
Does the pain get any easier with time, or is it exactly the same as it was the day you heard it?
It doesn't get easier. Can I be honest? It doesn't get easier. You know, they speak about these puddles of grief. The pain that I experienced from losing my boy, I can't see it getting easier. I think one learns to adjust. I think routine is good. I need routine. Exercise has helped me, but the pain doesn't get easier. I have to say, I'm finding the pain getting worse, because as time goes by, I miss him even more. I do miss him even more. But that's why, you know, I'm with a therapist. I don't take any meds. I don't drink alcohol. My therapy is my exercise and speaking to my psychologist once a week and being with my friends, you know, who hold me tight. And I have to say that, you know, Justin and Megan, my unit, we're an amazing unit, and we're very, very good for each other. And we're all going through the pain together. So it just helps to distribute the pain. It doesn't get easier though.
So maybe we can ask Dylan, because Dylan and Adam were friends, and Jamie, of course, was friends and family. When you see them, does it bring back pain and memories, or is this part of a war that you're all in together to try get some meaning and some healing through doing good?
So Howard, I'll tell you, you know, I was on the trip with Adam in Israel, and, you know, that morning when we got woken up, you know, we got a message, you know, on our WhatsApp group to say, you know, you can sleep in tonight to this morning, but make sure that you're in the conference room at this time, as we have an important announcement for you to make. And there we all went down and we saw, you know, the tapes and the, you know, the hysteria of that morning, and we all rushed down. We didn't know what was going on, and we thought, you know, did someone do something that was bad? Did something happen the night out? You know, what could have happened? And never in my wildest dreams did I ever imagine that in that moment, someone would have told me that a friend like Adam was, you know, would have taken his own life. You know, when we were first told that Ad took his own life, none of us knew how. We didn't know what was going on. We didn't know anything. We thought, you know, maybe he'll spark the night before. We didn't know anything. And then obviously, you know, once the trip progressed and we found out all the news, you know, it never, like Jody says, it never gets easier. You know, obviously some days you do distract yourselves and you do other things, and, you know, that day you don't think of things. But, you know, on those special days, you know, for example, his birthday, his yahrzeit, on those days, you know, you rarely get that feeling of, you know, you had a pre-drink, so you had a party, you had an event, and you're like, where's Ad? You know, why isn't he here? You know, and for me, you know, those are the hardest moments. It's the moments when you look around and you say, you know, hold on, where's Seef? And you realize, you know, in that split second that, hold on, you know, he's not here anymore. And I think for me, you know, that is the hardest part. It's the hardest part that, you know, me as a friend, Jody as a mother, and, you know, the whole team of Adams Forum, there was nothing we could have done to prevent what has happened. And there's nothing that we could have done to try and avoid what has happened. And I think, you know, the main message for tonight, and, you know, the reason that Adams Forum did, you know, create this platform and create this event tonight is really to show you that, you know, there is help out there. As Daryl showed you, you know, without legs, Daryl has found the, you know, the stamina, he's found the strength to lift himself up and live another day. And I think with Jody, with Justin, with Megan, you know, I think often, you know, we always hear Jody's story, but I think from myself, I'd, you know, personally just like to, you know, mention Jody. I'd like to mention Megan and Justin as well. You know, you don't see so much of Justin and you don't see so much of Megan, but, you know, that battle is fought as a family. And, you know, that family is something that, you know, nobody can break. And the strength and the bond that that family has is something that will live on forever. And I think, you know, people say, you know, things happen for a reason, whether I believe that or not. But you can really see, you know, the Seef family as a whole is a structure that cannot be broken. And from myself, I just like to say to Jody and as well to Justin and to Megan, you know, the strength and resilience that you guys have shown, there's no ways that we would have been able to create the forum that Adams Forum is without you guys. So thank you.
Thank you, Dylan. Thank you.
Jody, there's a comment that says grief is the price we pay for love.
Sure. Yeah. Sure. That's quite a comment, Howard. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just
that what we mean, Jody, is that every tear that you shed is an indication of the love that you feel. I mean, can you imagine if there was grief, what that would say about your relationship with that person? The two go absolutely hand in hand. And Adam lives inside you. I mean, we experience it as you talk. And he lives inside you, and now, you know, to an extent, just by feeling it with you, we understand more. And you are doing exactly right now, you know, what you're calling for in terms of sharing emotion and of the okayness, if you like, with vulnerability. How many people who've gone through really tough times shut off and say, I don't want to talk about it, or it makes me too upset, or I'll never be able to get up after this, or you have to move on, or that saying, oh, the past is the past. We know that the past isn't the past. The past affects the present and the future. And what you are doing now is you're teaching all of us something right now, just by doing it, how you navigate the most traumatic journey. And honestly, we've all been exposed to so many people who went through experiences like Holocaust or even the struggle in South Africa. And the common thing was, okay, done, let's forget about it. And that's when you have the nightmares and the post-traumatic stress and all the physical symptoms that come out. You teaching us to process and to prevent that huge onslaught of post-traumatic stress by saying that I will embrace the journey with difficulty, with support, with self-compassion to myself. And you are the living epitome of what we all need to learn. And your courage is just so appreciated, Jody, and I think is so meaningful to me listening to you and to so many people.
Thank you, Dorianne. I appreciate that.
Jody, can you help everyone watching? How do you want people to react to you? When they see you, do you want them to come up to you and hug you in a post-COVID world? Do you want them to pretend as if nothing's happened? Do you want them to come and show empathy and speak in soft voices? What would you like, how would you like people to react to you when they see you?
Such a good question.
It's a great question. So how I'm a hugger. I love hugs. I really, really have. What I do want to say though is that what I've learned coming out of this is that I need to be with authentic people. Going through a trauma like this and a grief like this, I want to surround myself with people that are real and authentic. And if they're real and authentic, then just bring on those hugs, because I'm a hugger. Yeah. I think, you know, what I found difficult in the beginning was, and I've tried to unpack this, is, oh, Jody, you're so brave. You're such an inspiration. And I didn't quite know how to interpret what people meant with, you're so brave. You know, what is it about me, you know, me being brave, you know? And I've spent a lot of time on this and with my therapist and unpacking that, because I didn't quite understand what people meant by, Jody, you're so brave. You know, look at, you know, because it was hard initially. You know, you go to a supermarket and you think, oh, people look at you, oh, shame, you know, there's Jody, she lost her son to suicide. You know, he was questioning his sexuality, or you know, you think like that. But that was initially, but I've worked through that. So for me, you know, I'm the kind of person who wears their emotions on their sleeve. I feel it's important to talk about these things, you know, and to be real. And I am real, and I want to be with people who are real. So, you know, if people, I want to talk to people, I want to, you know, if people want to hug me, I will hug them straight back. It needs to be, I haven't, you know, I've realized now that I need to be with people who get me, I get them, they're authentic, and we can truly empathize, you know, with each other. I don't know if that's answered your question, Howard.
Yeah, Jody, I think it is. I think if you look in the comments, you will see so much love that is being expressed for you, that you will understand how you have such a special place in so many people's hearts. And I think complete and utter strangers are listening to you tonight, wishing they could come out and hug you, and just admiring for the fact that you're willing to come out and make a difference. And the fact that you're willing to come out publicly and do these things and work through your pain in front of all of us is just the most remarkable, inspirational thing to do.
Thanks, Howard. You know, the truth is that the whole thing is that I want to talk about this because I think there are so many families that, and Daryl alluded to it as well, that have people in their family that are grappling with what Adam was going through. And we need to talk about it. And we need forums, and we need to reduce the stigma. And if I can play a role, you know, with Adam's Forum in reducing the stigma and saying that and I know it's a little bit of a cliche, but that it is okay not to be okay. You know what I'm saying? And we just need to be comfortable with who we are. And I'm going to echo what a very special rabbi in my life once said, Rabbi Afson, that Hashem will love you unconditionally, no matter who you are or what you stand for. You know what I'm saying? So it's okay not to be okay. And I just want people to, you know, and Jamie mentioned it, not necessarily seek and assist, but if someone is struggling, get them help. Don't let them be in the situation that I'm in, where I tried to get help, it was too late, because I look at Daryl, and Daryl got the help. And you know, he spoke about in the next 50 years, Howard, I heard what you said. So please God, there's no more suicidal ideation, and you'll live a beautiful life for the next 50 years. You know, there is help there. There is help there. There are people who are willing to listen, and just get that help, because We just don't want anyone to experience the tragedy, to lose a beautiful, beautiful life like Adam, who had so much to offer to this world. I don't want it to happen to any other family. So if by me speaking like this can help, bring it on.
Jody, thank you. We're going to come back to you a little later with a few questions. You can turn off your camera for a few moments. But Dori, I want to pose a question to you just before we come to Bryan. And this is from someone who says, I'm watching the show. I'm not sure that the mental illness well-being side is coming through. We are all rational, but mental illness isn't. The issue of mistaking the comfort of death versus the pain of living is vital to understand any suicide.
Look, I think that there's a lot in that question. You know, it's not it's true. That's why your question earlier to Daryl was that you appeared so rational, because it's a rational decision against hugely irrational feeling. An irrational situation. When you are in such pain, it's not irrational, and you feel that on the outside there's nobody who could connect with you, and if they really knew you, they would hate you even more because you're not good enough, and that you come down on yourself every day. You can see almost, well, you know, I can't live with this for one day longer. The whole thing is just the irrationality of coming to that kind of decisions about yourself and your perception about the world. The mental illness, you know, is sometimes a fine thing, because we're saying now during COVID, you know, when do you say you're mentally ill? When do you say that you need to pick up the phone onto one of the helplines or get some professional help? Everybody has a bad day. There are two factors that are incredibly important. One is duration. How long? I mean, you don't go the 10 years, you actually don't even go 3 days. You can have a bad mood or a bad day, but if this kind of thing is persisting, the other thing is extent, duration and extent. How long and how bad? And your most deciding thing is it preventing you from coping with your work or coping with your relationships? Is it preventing you from connecting from other people in your personal life? Or is it preventing you from doing what you usually do every day? And I think that the emphasis on wellness from the question we've had, I don't want to lose the lessons, and I'm sure the importance of routine. You know, you'll see every television is saying, have a routine. So Jody was talking about that. She was talking about exercise for her, exercise, nutrition, and sleep, those kind of things. How do you come to terms with the absolute importance of being in a tribe? Your tribe, my tribe, and the tribe could be a tribe of 3, but these people understand you and they have your back and they're with you no matter what. Or it can be a wider tribe. And right now, Howard, I can't see everybody who's on this webinar, but I feel the connection through the messages, and that we are a tribe, and that, you know, through these connecting messages of learning and inspiration that are being brought to the community, it's extremely connecting. And nothing joins people more than a shared emotional event, whether it's 2 people or a country, whether it's negatively or positively. How were we when we all won the World Cup? Just connected. How are we in going through together or understanding what's affecting that we're in a similar kind of storm? And that makes us more compassionate members of the human race. And I really I've just, you know, so appreciated the honesty and the openness, absolute kind of torn openness of both Jody and Daryl when they say it's not good every day. And during those days, I can look after myself with kindness.
So Dori, it is actually quite amazing. Our YouTube channel is currently being bombed by BDS supporters. And if ever there was an understanding of mental illness, it is the sort of person who on a webinar like this thinks that this is an opportunity to express political views of whatever nature. If ever there was a lack of emotional intelligence, if ever there was a sense of complete irrationality, I think they're in fact proving that exactly tonight. So well done to you. Please go get help. That's the message that we have for all of you. Go get help. With that, our last panelist this evening is Bryan Schimmel. Many people will know Bryan because they must have seen him perform in musicals. To everyone, he looks as one of the greatest successes of South Africa. And before we get on to Bryan and his story, we'd like to maybe just show you an extract, which is a little summation of maybe what Bryan has achieved in life. Bryan, for people watching that, you look like the most successful musical director South Africa has ever produced. Why on earth would you be on a panel like this?
You know, Howard, we often look at people who are successful with awe and admiration and respect, and sometimes even envy. But, you know, one of the things that has come up this evening is we don't always stop to think that those same people who may be so successful, whether it's distinctions, whether it's in music, those same people have endured challenges and difficulties, and they harbor secrets and fears that shape who they are and what that success is. And earlier on, Jeremy spoke about how we hide our reality behind masks. You know, I have a speech impediment, and for years, it bothered me, and I thought it was it was an aberration, until eventually I realized it's part of my character. I'm gay, and you know, when I was a teenager, I thought that that was an issue. And just what we've learned this evening is that from Daryl and Adam's story, that it's that being gay, even in today's world, it is as difficult as it was 40 years ago. I'm an 18 years recovered crystal meth addict, and this year I celebrate 22 years of living with HIV. So you're asking about why, about what, about somebody who is successful. The challenge I've lived longest with is my speech, as I said. And you might wonder how I overcame that and decided that I'm able to speak on a forum like this. And it's because, you know, life happens. And even when we think we don't have a choice, we always have a choice, because attitude is a choice. It is the one, attitude is the one choice we have absolute power over. And I wish I'd known Adam, because I choose to be a voice of courage, an inspiration for so many who are unable to express themselves for fear of rejection and judgment, pain, abandonment, and stigma. And these are feelings I've known my whole life. You know, I remember as a kid at school being called moffy, pansy, faggot, homo. And I would hear those words every day. And what that does is, you know yourself, but you can't say, yes, this is who I am, and this is, you can't. And because of fear. And, you know, all I ever wanted as a kid was to be acknowledged and to be accepted and to fit in and not feel fearful. And that's why I hear Daryl so clearly. And I had no sense of self-worth or self-confidence or self-esteem, believe it or not, until I sat behind the piano. But the moment I stepped away from the piano, I was shy, I was awkward, I was reserved. And I was afraid of speaking to people. I was afraid of speaking to people I didn't know. If I was asked a question in class, I was frightened of being laughed at or made fun of. I was not a sportsman, and I was always the weakling. And right from junior school all the way into high school, I was bullied. Verbal abuse, emotional abuse, and physical abuse. I was kicked, punched, tripped, ambushed, ridiculed. And in those days, bullying was done face to face. The kids today have it far worse in terms of cyberbullying. That for me is far worse, in that it's nameless and faceless. But the piano was my only escape. And I say that because it wasn't like I could go home and share any of these inner struggles with my family, because home was another challenge. You see, it's not just kids at school who battle with people who are different. Its parents too. I had a father who was born in Germany. He fought in the Second World War, and after living in Israel for a number of years, he moved here and then married my mom in 1955. My mom was gentle, empathetic, and protective. My father was tough, distant. He was strict, and he was sometimes violent. And I was the antithesis of everything he had imagined in a son. I had a tough time at school with kids who didn't get me, and a tough time at home with a parent who didn't get me. But I was clear about one thing: I wanted to make music my career. My father, however, had other ideas, and I ended up spending a year at WITS in electrical engineering, which at that time was the most miserable year of my life. And in fact, it was the first time that I attempted suicide in that year. And I had overdosed, and I was taken to hospital. So after that, I went to Israel for 6 months on a general studies course. And then I came back, and in 1985, the Technikon Pretoria was starting a new course in jazz and light music. And I moved there, and being around drama students and music students and art students, I flourished, and I found what I was meant to be. I was being, and my drive to succeed was fueled by an unflinching determination to prove my father wrong. But unfortunately, he'd never get to see me at the peak of my success, because cancer claimed him, and he passed away in '92 at the age of 69. So I'm getting emotional, and I know that there are a lot of people watching, but I wanted to say, I've painted a rather hard and cold picture of my father. And indeed, as a kid, that was my experience of him. As an adult, I came to realize that my father was actually a very generous, kind, yet highly principled man, who loved me in the only way he knew how. But that was not the way that I needed to receive his love. He was a prime example of someone who acted out of ignorance and therefore fear, because of his upbringing and his frame of reference. I craved his attention and approval, and I craved it in a certain way. And it wasn't when I didn't receive it in that way, I perceived it as disapproval or feeling unloved. And that dynamic created a vast chasm in our relationship. But once I got older, I forgave him. And I realized that coming from Europe and the war, he did the best he could with what he had. So he'd passed, and he didn't see that I started in my career, and I was climbing. And there was a point in which I was riding a wave in the early 90s, and I was peaking early, because unfortunately, it's a hazard of the entertainment industry in South Africa. that the ceiling is low, and if you're good enough, you reach it quickly and you stagnate. So I had my eyes on the US, and I applied for a green card, and in '95, I was granted what they call an extraordinary ability visa, which meant that I didn't need a sponsor, a job offer, or a proof of income. So off I went, and my mom really, really struggled with my departure because I was close to her. I was very close to her. And unlike my father, she always understood my passion and she supported my choices, even when she didn't agree with them. So I arrived in New York thinking, I'm going to take New York by storm. Talent was my anchor. It was my trump card. It was my security. It was my way of feeling acceptable in the world. In South Africa, talent is unique and special. In New York, it's a given. Everybody's talented. Everybody's ambitious, and everybody's out for number one. And you're not just fighting against people who are talented. You're fighting against numbers of people. America has a population of 350 million people, and so proportionately there are going to be that many more who want to do the same jobs. Add to this the fact that Americans are breastfed on the art of shameless self promotion, something that I'd never had to do because my talent had spoken for itself. And besides being hung up about my speech, it was easier to let the talent talk for me. So I'd spent my childhood and teen years defining myself by the fact that I was talented and musical. And for so long, I searched for a sense of belonging and acceptance in a youth that I felt didn't accept me. And now in this all-consuming, unforgiving city of seemingly limitless possibilities that is New York, where talent is the norm and not the exception. One day I stared into the mirror and I asked myself a daunting question. And the question was, if I didn't have talent, what would I have to offer the world? Who am I without music? Music had always saved me. Music had always pulled me through. And suddenly it wasn't. And I had to step way out of my comfort zone and dig deep and go on a very, very unexpected journey to find out who I really was. Coming from a protected and sheltered upbringing, I'd always believed that drugs were only ever used by junkies and lowlifes and people who lived on the street. The idea of drugs as recreational, used by people with means, was a foreign concept to me. But I was in a new country, experiencing a new life. It was exciting and seductive and alluring and all of that stuff. It made me feel powerful and confident and uninhibited. And it heightened the sexual experience. When I first started using meth, it was on occasion. And occasions became every second weekend, then every weekend. And eventually the weekends rolled into weekdays, keeping me awake for days on end. And it was in that crazy period of hedonistic behavior that I tested positive for HIV in 1998 at the age of 34. Strangely, I didn't freak out initially, but the news is still shocking. The newest ARVs were just proving successful. But still, I didn't freak out because I acknowledged that it was my own behavior that had brought this on. I owned it. I took responsibility for it, and I accepted that I might never see the age of 50. And it still baffles me that I'm still here at the age of 55. So over a period of 3 years, I spiraled out of control. I was getting fired from jobs because I was perpetually late, or I never showed up at all. I had maxed all my credit cards. I had debt collectors calling me, and the walls were closing in. And I remember a freezing winter's day in January of 2001, 4 years after I'd arrived in the US, where I had a dream. I felt so depressed, so desperate, so lonely, helpless, defeated, unable to, as we've heard earlier this evening, to reach out to anybody and say, I'm struggling. And I planned my suicide. I had sleeping pills, alcohol, a gas oven, and a blade. And I was about to do it, and something stopped me. And the one thing that stopped me was thinking about my mom. No matter what I'd been through, my mother had loved me unconditionally. In the depths of my darkness and despair, I was somehow lucid enough to think of my mom and how selfish and unfair it would be if I was never able to tell her how much I loved her and how much her love had meant to me. And so I pulled myself away from the edge and packed up my apartment in New York and left 4 months before 9/11, as it happens. And I moved west and I went to Las Vegas. Being the entertainment capital of the world seemed like a logical and reasonable step. But in fact, nothing I was doing seemed logical anymore. And regardless, my mom supported me in this too. The meth use got worse, and a year later, I had a vision in my head, and it was a very clear sign. And it was like a crossroads. I was in a desert, and there was a crossroad, and there was a sign that went this way and a sign that went that way. And the one sign said, stay in the US and you will die. And the other sign said, pack up your pride, pack up your shit and go home. Pride had been the biggest thing that had kept me from going home years earlier. I didn't want to return home a failure. But now my life depended on it. I flew home in August of 2002 with nothing but 16 boxes of personal effects. I came home to family, support, to friends, to acknowledgement, and life is always, and to the life and the career that you saw in that video. Life is always full of twisted and wonderful ironies. And I was able to spend the last 8 years of my mum's life with her, and to tell her that I loved her and how much her love had meant to me. And the last 6 months of my industry being down and being without work, I've needed her so much. And it's very, very comforting to hear this evening that it's okay to feel down about being down. So yeah.
So Bryan, yeah, I think the thing we've learned tonight, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
That's one of the great lessons. I want everyone to turn on their cameras again, please, because I think we need to, there's some very important discussions that we need to have. And one of the remarkable things of all the stories that we've heard of this evening is an issue of sexuality and the alienation that comes with sexuality, or choices in sexuality, or orientation in sexuality. And how is it possible in 2020 that our broader community in South Africa, as the Jewish community, that people still believe that somehow it's an issue in their lives, that somehow someone will think less of someone because of their sexuality? Haven't we in fact passed through that, passed over that? Isn't it no longer an issue? And if it is no longer an issue, why do people still believe within their own heads that it is?
Howard, I think I may have an answer there, because you know, I have a friend of mine who had only 6 months ago, he met a partner who had come out, and the partner's family have abandoned this kid. And I think, like with any form of prejudice, I think it's rooted in myth and it's rooted in assumption. And that I think it takes generations to undo what people are taught. You know, kids are not born homophobic. Kids are not born racist. Kids are not born to naturally hate other people. It's taught. So, and what doesn't help is, I think, religious factions and religious groups also don't help, and they perpetuate. Religious groups perpetuate this whole thing of it's wrong. And
so let us actually ask for some advice, because I think maybe some of our religious leaders, our community leaders, our school leaders need some advice from this panel. How do you make people feel part of the community? How do you make people feel accepted? How do you make people feel that it's okay, whoever you are enough, it is okay? Dori, what do we go tell those people to make them understand that whoever you are, that's who you are, and it's absolutely okay?
Howard, I think that there's nothing that will make them understand it more than this than tonight. You know, when they hear the stories of the kind of divisiveness, the lack of acceptance, the resultant loneliness, and in some cases, the irreversible, just shocking consequences of some of those ideas, I think the stories speak for themselves. They speak of pain, they speak of isolation, and there's absolutely no religious person ever who wants to promote that in any way. So I think it's a matter of saying, you know, how do some of these very strong ideas get understood and manifested? And what are some of the consequences of it? Can we build a much more inclusive, much more inclusive and embracing society, which I think every religious leader would really want to do, you know, and see what some of this kind of thought and judgment actually does to people. And so, you know, I would really think that this webinar should be seen by everybody. And you say, you know, where have I been? Where am I going? What are my real values? How can I encourage what we really stand for in our religion, which is the promotion and the acceptance and the love and the connection of our community as people? So,
yeah, Daryl, please come in there.
If I could add to what Dorianne's saying, I completely agree that the power of example is really most helpful here. I'm thinking of two much younger friends that I have, and one of them, they're both gay, and one of them grew up in a community, in the theatre community. He has a lot of older gay role models. His parents know a lot of gay people, and they've always been accepting of it. Whereas my other friend, it comes from a very conservative community, and his parents' attitudes are completely different. So I think, you know, growing up, seeing gay people being accepted and being welcomed into your home, and someone can really help to affirm that and to show yourself that, okay, it's, you know, this is okay. And I think school leaders and workplace leaders can kind of make their environments conducive to gay people by, you know, showing that they know gay people, that they are welcoming to gay people. I think it has to be done through example, like people seeing this webinar, or, you know, teachers being openly gay, or, you know, gay colleagues being promoted based on their performance, not on their sexuality or their identity.
And how
sorry, Dylan.
Yes, so I'm just going to add on that, and, you know, add on, you know, Adam's Forum side on this whole situation as a whole, you know, as well as, you know, Jody Seef. You know, as much as mental health and this talk is related to, you know, being gay and everything, firstly, I'd like to say that in our own community, I'd like to first congratulate that our own community at King David Linksfield hosted their first event, and they now have a platform where gay men and women and whoever they want to be can go to, and there is a committee at school that they can go to and be who they want to be. Unfortunately, Daryl, obviously with you, it is different, but with us in the Jewish community, you know, unfortunately, our community leaders, they do follow by the book. And unfortunately, by the book, you know, they so-called say that gays aren't accepted. But I think that's exactly what Adam's Forum is here to do. It's to say that regardless of religion, regardless of race, of gender, of any sort of social disparity or separation that you have inside of you, that Adam's Forum and hopefully every single person that's watching tonight, you know, if God forbid, you know, you're going to have a situation where someone's maybe going to take their life or be in a depression of such that they're going to think that, you know, they don't want to be in this world, that hopefully every single person, including myself and each person on this webinar tonight, can see that, you know, there's a choice that you have in life, whether you're going to be accepting or whether you're going to follow something that is going to lose life. And for me, the biggest part is that you're going to choose life and you're going to choose acceptance. And unfortunately, people are born with certain disabilities. The same way, if you see someone that's born with a broken leg and you go and tell him all of a sudden, go and walk, you know, that person can't just walk. And I think that physical illness is very much so seen as a much easier thing to overcome than mental illness, because you can see it. And I think with mental illness, that's the biggest thing. And that's exactly what the stigma, and that's exactly what Adam's Forum as a whole is trying to break, is that mental illness is as important as physical illness. And whether somebody has a broken arm, whether they have a broken leg, or whatever they do have, mental illness and what's inside of them means as much as a physical disability has. And I hope that every single person on this talk tonight can really understand that it's time to be accepting. It's time to end the stigma on mental health. And really, you know, we're in the 21st century. We don't want to hear these situations where people aren't accepted anymore. We're a community where we are accepting, I am accepting, and I hope that every single person on this webinar tonight is accepting in themselves.
So I'm going to ask, sorry, Dori, just before you, I'm going to ask each of our panelists as well, just to go into the Q&A section and select one question that you would like to answer. And the choice is absolutely yours, but see what resonates with you and see what, but while you do that, Jody, I want you to try and give advice to people. If you gathered, for example, a group from the rabbinate, of leadership of the community, of people of influence, what message would you give them?
The message that I would give them is that, once again, it's okay not to be okay. Just accept me for who I am. Don't try and be somebody that you're not. This is who I am, and accept me for who I am. Love me for who I am, no matter what my imperfections. This is me, and be accepting.
Absolutely. Dori, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on, you know, on the breadth and the Dylan. Thank you for your wonderful words of wisdom and of reminder. I just think that unfortunately, sometimes it takes a huge incident. And this tragedy absolutely rocked the community, which serves in a sense to kind of shake you up and stretch your internal yardstick. And you saw some of the response of the rabbis over that kind of time. You know, it was almost like we had to do a self-audit or a religious audit, where you stop and you take stock and you say, what are priorities? Where have we been? Where are we going? Where do we need to focus from now on? And then suddenly, as a result of something like this, one hopes, and I think there has been, you know, to some extent, a priority shift. What really is and isn't important? You know, what do we have to hold on to, and at what price? So in that way, you know, we have to take what happened and say, how can it influence and change all of us from a religious point of view, and just from a general inclusive, non-judgment, acceptance, coming out point of view, as we've been talking about.
Bryan, isn't it amazing that when we're young, we want to be just like everyone else? And as soon as we get a little older, we want to be absolutely unique and not like anyone else we know.
But you know, that's the thing about aging. And it's funny, when we get to our age, Howard, I look at kids now who are in their teens, and what social media has done is it's compounded that need to fit into a certain box and into a certain stereotype. And they all care so much about having the right look, the right image, and do they fit a certain criteria, and the pressure that the kids put themselves under when they are different and when they don't fit into those criteria is as rough now as it was then. And I think the biggest lesson is teach your children how to reach out. Yeah. Teach your kids how to ask for help. And we often think asking for help is a weakness. And, you know, couple of weeks ago, and Dorianne and I were in conversation with Gaynor Young, who is famous for having fallen 18 meters at the State Theatre. And she's this extraordinary woman, and she said the lesson that she had to learn from her tragedy is that asking for help is not a weakness. It's a strength. And I think if parents can instill that, then maybe incidents and tragedies like Adam's won't happen again.
So Bryan, just following on.
Yeah,
I just want to say, how can they instill that? I don't want to lose this, you know, this example that you're saying, and it was extraordinary. How? You know, parents need to say, I messed up. I made a mistake. I don't have all the answers. I'm sorry. You know what I learned from it is this. This is my moment, because how do kids learn? You know, how do you instill it? Kids learn in 3 ways, really. Number 1 is example. Number 2 is example. And number 3 is example.
Yeah.
So if they see you not having all the answers, asking for help, you know, being apologetic, acknowledging when you messed up, saying that you don't have all the answers. I think that does a lot in instilling exactly what you're saying, to be able to come forth and ask for it when you need to.
But exactly what you've been saying, Dori, the whole thing of example is exactly what answers Howard's other question, is that kids learn by examples. So whether it's the example of of asking for help, or the example of being homophobic or being racist or being whatever the example you set is what the kid learns, whether it's a good example or a bad example.
So Bryan, I because it's getting so late, and it's remarkable, you know, we watch the numbers of these things to see how what we're talking about is resonating with our audience, and it's nearly 10:30, and we still have nearly 2,000 people busy watching us, which is unbelievable, because traditionally in a webinar, you see as like by 9:30, the numbers have plummeted, everyone's gone to bed, but we've retained an audience. And in fact, instead of numbers going down, our numbers often grew during the course of this evening, which is absolutely remarkable. We're going to end it in 3 minutes exactly. So I want to give 1 minute. Daryl, you were going to look at a question, give us a 1 minute answer to any of the questions, and we'll ask Bryan and Jody for 1 minute answers to any of the questions, and then we'll come sum up. But I would like all of our audience, please, to leave a comment. I think it's really important that people watching give feedback to the people. What did you learn tonight? What resonated with you? What really hit a nerve? And what would you like to go and teach other people because of what you've heard this evening? For those people, because we keep on being answered, is this available? Is this a recording? Because I know we've had schools who've requested recordings. We've had companies that have messaged through requesting recordings. All our recordings are online on the SA Juice Report YouTube channel. Please feel free to use them in whatever forum you can. The more people we can help by showing them things like this video, the more delighted we would be. So Daryl, give us a 1 minute answer to one of the questions.
Yeah, okay, my connection cuts out for a little bit, so I can't get back. I can't read the question exactly, but there was a question that said something like, you know, you think that people won't understand what you're going through, so why even bother talking to them, you know, when you're feeling suicidal. When I was considering suicide, I did think that no one would be able to understand what I was going through, but pain and suffering is universal. When I came back to Cape Town, I had a challenge. My psychiatrist recommended a Muslim psychologist to speak to me, and I was very skeptical about talking to her because, you know, her religion, she was very conservative, and her religion obviously wasn't very open to gay people. But I spoke to her in detail about my sex life, and I asked her the first time that I saw her, you know, will you be able to can I talk to you about anything? Will you be able to counsel me? And she said, you know what, there are many differences between us, but there are also many things that we have in common, and emotions are common. And, you know, she gave me fantastic advice and guidance on my relationships. She listened to everything I had to say with a completely open and empathetic approach. So, you know, even just having someone listen to your situation can make your burden feel lighter, even if they haven't been through exactly what you're going through. Emotions and pain and suffering are universal. People understand that.
Jody, your question you'd like to answer?
Yeah, so there were two questions. The one question, Jody, are you going to write a book, and are you going to title it Dandelion? I'm not going to write a book, but it's given me a bit of food for thought. But the second question was quite a tough question. It was from somebody named Michael, and he said, Jody, did you know that your son was gay? And would it, you know, have made any difference? What would your reaction be? So Michael, I had no idea that my son was questioning his sexuality. Absolutely no idea. This was revealed in the letter that he left to me, that he didn't say that he was gay. He said he was questioning his sexuality. Michael, it would have made no difference whatsoever. You know, Adam's my child, absolutely love and adore him. Gay, straight, pansexual, whatever sexual, I would be completely 100% accepting, and so would the community. It was all in Adam's head. And I think that was his tipping point. I think that was the last straw over and above the mental health issues that he was grappling with. So 100%, I had no idea. And if I did, would have accepted him with open arms.
Bryan?
I would like to say something that's not directly related to a question, I want to acknowledge Daryl and Jody, because as I was listening to your stories, and I'm thinking, I'm going after these two extraordinarily, immensely inspirational and difficult stories, and how do I follow that? And the reason that I'm raising this is because and Dorianne has always left me with all kinds of pearls of wisdom and nuggets of information. And she said, we often listen to others and we compare our situations, and we think there are always people who are doing better than us and always people who are doing worse. But she says there's no greater suffering than your own. And yeah, and you can, and so I think for all those watching, I hope that everybody is taking something away from this that will inspire them to make something in their families' lives better and more understanding and more empathetic, but to also realize that your own suffering is your suffering.
Dori, before we come to you for your 1 minute, let us say that there will always be someone better looking than you, richer than you, thinner than you, more clever than you. But the race isn't against them, it's against yourself. And the moment you compare yourself to someone else's life, you're doomed for failure, because you have no idea what happens in their heads. You have no idea what happens behind their bedroom door, behind their front door. All you have to worry about is yourself and be satisfied with who you are. And the rest is just commentary. Dorianne?
Howard, thank you. I can just endorse it. Thank you, Bryan, for that. just to say that, people say, how can I care that much about myself when I look around me, even now in COVID? We say we're all in the same boat, and we know we're not all in the same boat. We're in the same storm, but many different boats. So people feel guilty about looking at their situation, whatever it is. So I think that you're absolutely right. And just to remind us that compassion and love is infinite. It's not like if there are 3 slices for me, there are only 5 slices left to care about everyone else. And I think that we've seen that a lot. It's an infinite kind of thing. And because of 9/11 coming up, I just want to tell you about the bit of research that happened after the tragedy, where the researchers phoned up all the family that had lost someone at that moment and asked them whether they'd had any contact with them, whether there'd been a phone call. And with the age of technology, there'd been many, many phone calls. And what's always been quite amazing when they said, what did your loved one say? Every single one of them said exactly the same thing. Everyone. There wasn't one different answer. And at that time, we don't walk around like that all the time, but we do get a sudden focus of what really counts. So it's about finding the courage to speak out, finding the courage to ask for help, and experiencing the connection and compassion from other people and for yourself that I think has really come out tonight.
Dylan, we've never met, but tonight would never have happened without your grand vision and your determination to be able to tell these stories, to help other people who you've never met, to be able to destigmatize the issue of mental health and of therapy. You are a remarkable individual. I cannot wait for COVID to be over so I can meet you in person. But the last word tonight goes to you.
Firstly, thank you to you, Howard. And, a month ago or 2 months ago, never did I think that when I phoned Howard for the first time, I didn't know, what do I say to this guy that's had these webinars with 20,000 people? And, how do I make an event that can, attract an audience that will, be online? And tonight, as of such, I don't know how many more people that we still have, and it's already, 10 o'clock or 10:30. And I just think it's remarkable that, in our community, we can really see that there really is this huge issue with mental health. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, this is the first talk ever created in the Jewish community around mental health, or as far as I've been alive, or as far as I've been aware of. I've never attended any sort of webinar or any sort of event at school. I was never taught about mental health. It was always something that was always brushed along. And for me, as a Jewish young man, brought up in a King David environment, gone through, the B'nai Akiva environment, been brought up in the good Jewish home, it's really so sad and so true to see that mental health really is not brought up in the house, and mental health is something that really is just brushed over. And us as Adams Forum are really here to end this. And to each person that's still watching right now, I really want to reach out to every single one of you to, speak to your kids, understand where they're coming from, ask them not just how their day was, ask them about details of their day, ask them about how their lives are going. Don't ask them about education, don't ask them how they did in their test, ask them how are they feeling today. And I think that's the most important thing with mental health. It's about keeping your children and keeping each and every single one of us at a certain level of, today was a good day. And, each day may not be so good. And I think that, firstly, thank you to you, Howard, for allowing us to have this event. And, hopefully in the future, we may have many more events. And to each and every single person that's still on this event tonight, I really do just want to thank you. And thank you for having the time to listen to each and every single one of our speakers. Thank you to Dorianne. Thank you to Bryan. Thank you to Daryl. Thank you to Jody. And thank you to Jamie for sharing their stories and sharing their experiences in something that so many of us really have not been through in their own lives. So thank you to you, Howard, and good night to everybody.
Thank you.
we'll see everyone on Saturday night for 9/11. I've asked Danny to play us out. We messed up a little bit our shofar blowing because his connection broke down. So we're going to re-show the shofar blowing, and we're going to re-show the trailer for 9/11, our Saturday night webinar, where we'll be speaking to people who are in the towers when the aeroplanes hit. He'll also, Danny will post in the chat section the registration link. So if you haven't registered for Saturday night, please do so now. We can't wait to see you then. So we're going to play out. Thank you all so much for watching this evening. If you want to leave us a comment, we'll leave the chat open for the next 5 or 10 minutes so you can continue to put your comments in there. To our panelists, to Dylan, thank you so much for joining us. Have a good night, and we'll see you on Saturday.
Cheers, everybody.
Kia. Shavarim. Terua. Kia Gadola.
Why so serious?
May the force be with you.
Show me the money! Show me the money!
It's gonna be legend. Wait for it. And I hope you're not lactose intolerant because the second half of that word is dairy.
I'll be back.
Let me say to the families who lost loved ones on 9/11 that we have never forgotten your loss, nor wavered in our commitment to see that we do whatever it takes to prevent another attack on our shores.